So a bunch of you had questions about this philosophical methodology that Fricker calls philosophical genealogy. She sort of borrows it partly, or borrows this idea from Craig. And I'm going to just deal with a couple of these questions that I think are representative of the questions I got here. So somebody says, to me, it seems as though attributing knowledge in a Gettier case incorrectly would have no impact on one's ability to survive. How would this genealogy apply here? Would it be built off a starting point? I feel like it could be difficult to avoid eventually needing intuitions without keeping epistemology overly simple. And a bunch of you had these kind of questions about how genealogy works without any sort of intuitions. So one thing to note is that Gettier cases are weird cases. They're strange sort of cases that push at the boundaries of knowledge, or understanding of knowledge on the boundaries. And a genealogy is not supposed to sort of make sense of every case. It's not supposed to give, as we say, necessary and sufficient conditions for knowledge. And this relates to a number of your questions. Many of you wanted something that was like as strict as necessary and sufficient conditions for knowledge. I don't think that a genealogy is going to give you that. On the other hand, we saw Zagzebski in her paper try to argue that there's no sort of informative set of necessary and sufficient conditions for knowledge that are in any way sort of interesting or useful. And so maybe it's not so bad that we can't get it one with genealogy. We could still learn something. Compare this idea to this debate you hear a lot on the internet for years now. What's a sandwich? People always like these kind of things and say, is a hot dog a sandwich? Is a burrito a sandwich? What's the definition of a sandwich? It's hard to do. It's very hard to do. It might be impossible to give necessary and sufficient conditions for a sandwich. The same might be true of knowledge. That doesn't mean we can't give some account of the common core of the concept of knowledge through a genealogy. That's at least what Fricker would say. Likewise, we might be able to give some account of the common core of a sandwich to try to get at this idea that there are two pieces of bread, sort of, with something in between. That tells us something, even though it's not a definition or a complete set of necessary and sufficient conditions. Genealogy might similarly give us something like that in the case of knowledge, the common core, but it might not give us everything we need or everything we might want if we wanted necessary and sufficient conditions. And so it might not have that much light to shed on really challenging cases like Gettier cases. Another question somebody asked, I doubt that we can, in practice, disentangle genealogy from our intuitions, which relate to genealogy. Even if we just write a strict record of the facts, the system must ultimately rest on some kind of intuition. What would the strongest counter be for this idea that we need intuition? This person asks. Genealogy can't be disentangled from intuition. And I think this gets back to maybe some of the discussion in Nagel's piece and even Weinberg, Nichols, and Stitch that when we're talking about doubting intuitions in philosophy, I think we're doubting intuitions about particular cases. We tell a particular hypothetical story and we ask somebody no in this case, somebody justified in this case. This is how Gettier cases work. It's how the zebra case works. It's how the clairvoyance case works. These kind of cases, the Rufus is the hippopotamus case. All these cases are sort of pumping your intuitions about a particular example and taking that as data. This idea of giving our intuitions about whether a general story is plausible or seems likely to be true, you might think a different kind of intuition. It's not an intuition about a particular case. It's some judgment of plausibility. And I think that probably does have to be part of a philosophical genealogy. Is it a plausible story for how this concept might have come about in a state of nature? Not might actually have come about, but might be functionally useful. I do think we need some judgments about that. And those aren't going to be necessarily all empirical judgments. But on the other hand, they're not intuition about particular cases. So I think we might, be able to disentangle genealogy from particular case intuitions, though some kind of judgment of the sort you might broadly call intuitions, though not the one in the Weinberg, Nichols, and Stitch after, but broad notion of intuitions we might need. I think this questioner might be right about that. Finally, somebody asked, do these kinds of questions about unconscious cognition, the evolutionary roots of knowledge, need to be answered first in the realm of psychology before being asked or applied in the realm of epistemology? And the answer is, I think ideas from psychology and evolutionary biology and stuff are probably useful in thinking about whether this genealogy is plausible or not. But remember, it's not supposed to be an actual history. Fricker is not trying to give an actual history of how the concept of knowledge came about. She's trying to give sort of an account of its function, an account of its use in a scenario where it did come about. And so it's unclear, but I think you have to have some knowledge about the original state of the world and what it took to survive and what people were like. But it doesn't have to be a complete sort of evolutionary account that actually gets at the way things were at this time.